Commander Lee Hyun stood on the bridge of the warship Indomitable Spirit, staring at the display screen in front of him. The news was bad, very bad. Another star system had fallen to the Vorthak Empire. That made 12 civilizations in 6 months. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. His crew worked at their stations, but he could feel their worry. Everyone knew what was coming. The Vorthak were heading toward human space. "Sir, we have a message from Fleet Command," said Lieutenant Kim Nara from her position at the tactical station. She was young but smart. Hyun trusted her judgment more than officers twice her age. "Put it through," Hyun said. Admiral Song Ji-won appeared on the main screen. Her face looked tired. Dark circles under her eyes told the story of too many sleepless nights. "Commander Hyun, you are to proceed immediately to Kepler Station. Evacuate all civilians. The Vorthak fleet will reach that system in 72 hours. Hyun felt his stomach drop. Kepler Station was home to 50,000 people. Miners, researchers, their families. Good people who had never hurt anyone. "Admiral, what about defense? Surely we can—" "Commander," the Admiral cut him off. "Every military force that has tried to fight them has been destroyed. The Keltharians had ships twice the size of ours. The Vorthak cut through them like they were made of paper. The Zephyrians were master tacticians. Their strategies were studied in our military academies. The Vorthak learned their patterns and wiped them out in 3 days. The screen showed images of dead worlds, cities turned to ash, ships floating in space, broken and dark. Hyun had seen these reports before, but they still made him sick. "What makes them so dangerous?" asked Dr. Choi Hana from her station near the medical bay. She was the ship's doctor, but she also studied alien races. Her curiosity often led to important discoveries. Admiral Ji-won's expression grew darker. "They adapt. Their ships learn from every attack. Fire lasers at them and they develop better shields. Use missiles, and they create better point defense. By the second battle, they know exactly how you fight. By the third, you are dead." Chief Engineer Park Min-ho looked up from his console. "What about their technology? Can we copy it?" "We have tried. Our best scientists cannot understand how their ships work. They seem to be part machine, part something else. Living metal that changes and grows. Weapons that become stronger after each shot. It is like fighting ghosts that learn from your every move." Hyun studied the tactical display. Red markers showed Vorthak fleet positions. They moved in perfect formation, never breaking pattern. Each fleet followed the same route, used the same strategies. It was like watching a machine work. "Sir," Nara said quietly, "I have been studying their attack patterns. There is something strange." "What do you mean?" Hyun asked. "They are too perfect. Every battle follows the exact same plan. Probe the enemy defenses, learn their capabilities, then attack with overwhelming force. They never change this pattern." "Because it works," Hyun said. "Why change a winning strategy?" "But what if someone did not follow the expected pattern?" Nara continued. "What if we did something they could not predict?" Park Min-ho laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Like what? Dance around in circles? Their ships are faster than ours. Their weapons are stronger. Their shields are better. What could we possibly do that would surprise them?" Dr. Hana was looking at her own display, reading reports from previous battles. "There is something else. Look at these psychological profiles of the Vorthak prisoners. They think in very straight lines. Everything is logical to them. They cannot understand emotions like fear or anger or hope. Hope does not stop laser cannons," Min-ho muttered. But Hyun was thinking.
He had fought in many battles during his career.
Sometimes the impossible victories came not from following the rules, but from breaking them. "Nara, pull up the battle records from the Keltharian defense. Show me how they fought." The screen filled with tactical data. Ship movements, weapon deployments, shield configurations. Everything was neat and organized. Textbook military strategy. "Now show me the Zephyrian battles. Different ships, different weapons, but the same basic approach. Logical, predictable, professional. They all fought the same way," Hyun said slowly. "Not exactly the same, but the same thinking. The same type of military mind." "Of course," Nara said. "Good military doctrine is universal. You protect your flanks, concentrate your fire, maintain formation discipline. What if good military doctrine is exactly what gets you killed when fighting the Vorthak?" Hyun interrupted. The bridge fell silent. Outside the viewport, stars moved slowly past as the Indomitable Spirit traveled toward Kepler Station. Each point of light might hide a world full of people. People who would die if the Vorthak could not be stopped. You are talking about chaos, Dr. Hana said. Random behavior. But that is not how you win wars. Maybe it is how you win this war, Yun said. Specialist Yun, open a channel to Fleet Command. Yun Teek, their communications officer, looked nervous. Sir, you are not thinking of... I am thinking of keeping 50,000 people alive, Yun said firmly. The connection opened. Admiral Jiwan looked even more tired than before. Commander, you should be halfway to Kepler by now. Admiral, I want permission to engage the Vorthak fleet. Absolutely not. Your orders are to evacuate civilians, not to commit suicide. What if we could find a way to fight them? A way they have never seen before? The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Behind her, Hyun could see other officers working frantically. The weight of protecting human civilization sat on all their shoulders. Commander, I have lost too many good ships already. I will not lose yours on a crazy theory. Then let me test the theory. Let me take my ship and crew and see if humans can do something those other races could not. And what is that? Hyun looked around his bridge. At Nara with her quick mind and creative thinking. At Minho, who could fix anything with spare parts and determination. At Dr. Hana, who saw patterns others missed. At young Yoon, who never gave up even when things looked hopeless. Be unpredictable, he said. The connection ended. They had their orders. Evacuate the civilians and run. But as the indomitable spirit headed toward Kepler Station, Hyun found himself thinking about patterns and predictions and what happened when someone refused to follow the rules. In 72 hours, they would find out if being human was enough. The evacuation of Kepler Station took 18 hours. 50,000 people packed into cargo ships, personal shuttles, and anything else that could fly. Hyun watched families saying goodbye to their homes, carrying what few possessions they could manage. Children cried. Adults tried to be brave. Last transport is away, reported Nara. All civilians evacuated. Good, Hyun said. Now we wait. The indomitable spirit hung in space near the station's outer edge. Hyun had positioned his ship where they could observe but not be immediately detected. If his crew was going to die, they would at least learn something useful first. Contacts, Yoon called out. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Distance, 1 million kilometers. The main screen showed the Vorthak fleet. 30 ships in perfect formation. Each vessel was different, but they moved together like parts of a single machine. The ships themselves were strange to look at. Smooth curves mixed with sharp angles, metal that seemed to shift and flow, weapons that looked more grown than built. They are scanning the station, Dr. Hana reported from her position. Multiple sensor sweeps. Very thorough. Recording everything, Minho added. I have never seen scanning patterns like this. They are not just looking at the station. They are studying it. Hyun watched the enemy ships circle Kepler Station like sharks around wounded prey. How long do they usually take for this phase? Nara checked her records. Based on previous battles, they spend between 2 and 4 hours learning about their target. Then they send in probe attacks to test defenses. But there are no defenses here, Yoon pointed out. We evacuated everyone. They do not know that yet, Dr. Hana said. Look at their formation. They are treating this like it might be a trap. The Vorthak ships maintained their distance. Sensors continued sweeping back and forth. It was like watching a chess master study the board before making the first move. There, Nara said suddenly. 3 smaller ships breaking formation. The probe ships moved toward the station. They were fast and careful, never flying in straight lines. As they approached, weapons ports opened on their hulls. Energy readings spiked on the indomitable spirit's sensors. They are charging weapons, Minho reported. But why? The station is obviously empty. Because this is what they always do, Hyun realized. Step 1, scan the target. Step 2, probe with small attacks. Step 3, learn from the response. Except this time there will be no response. The probe ships fired on the station. Bright beams of energy struck the outer sections, causing explosions and fires. Pieces of metal spun away into space. The beautiful research station that had been someone's home began to die. They are waiting, Dr. Hana observed. Look at their positions. They expect return fire. Minutes passed. The probe ships fired again, hitting different sections of the station. Still no response from any defenders because there were none. This is confusing them, Nara said. Their whole strategy depends on learning how the enemy fights back. But we are not fighting back. The Vorthak probe ships moved closer. They began boarding the station, sending armed parties inside. Hyun knew they would find the station truly empty, but it would take time. Sir, Yoon said quietly. I am picking up their communications. Should I try to decode them? Do it! Yoon worked at his console. After several minutes, he looked up with a strange expression. Sir, these are not like any alien communications I have studied. They are very mathematical, like they are sending equations instead of words. Dr. Hana moved to look at the data. This fits with what we know about their psychology. They think in pure logic. Emotion is impossible for them to understand. That gives me an idea, Hyun said. Yoon, can you broadcast on their frequency? Yes, sir, but what would you send? Music. The bridge crew stared at him. Music? Minho asked. Sir, I think the stress— Think about it, Hyun said. They expect mathematical communications. Logical responses. What happens when they receive something completely illogical? Something based on emotion and creativity? Dr. Hana's eyes lit up. It might disrupt their analysis systems. Like feeding random data into a computer trying to solve an equation. Yoon, broadcast some human music toward their probe ships. Something emotional. Something beautiful. Yoon hesitated, then began working. What kind of music, sir? Something that makes you feel hope, Hyun said. The communications officer selected a piece of classical music and sent it toward the Vorthak ships. The response was immediate. The probe ships stopped moving. Their energy readings fluctuated wildly. They are confused, Nara reported. Look at their flight patterns. They keep starting to move, then stopping. The music is causing problems with their decision systems, Dr. Hana said, excitement in her voice. They cannot process it logically, so they cannot respond to it. But the effect did not last long. After a few minutes, the Vorthak ships resumed their boarding operation. Whatever confusion the music had caused, they had adapted to it. They learn fast, Minho said grimly. Yes, but did you see how long it took? Hyun asked. 3 minutes and 20 seconds of complete confusion. That is 3 minutes they could not fight effectively. Once, Nara pointed out. They will not fall for the same trick twice. Then we do not use the same trick twice. We do something different every time. The boarding operation finished. The Vorthak probe ships returned to the main fleet, carrying data about the empty station. The fleet formation shifted slightly. They are preparing for the final attack, Nara reported. This is when they usually destroy everything. Hyun made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. All hands prepare for combat. We are going to attack. Sir? Minho stood up from his station. Attack 30 ships with one? That is suicide. Maybe. Or maybe it is exactly what they will not expect. Yoon, send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them we are beginning field testing of new tactical doctrine. What new tactical doctrine? Nara asked. Hyun smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man about to do something very stupid or very brilliant. The doctrine of beautiful chaos. The strategy of doing things that make no sense. The tactics of being completely, absolutely, impossibly human. The indomitable spirit began moving toward the Vorthak fleet. 30 enemy ships against one human vessel. The odds were hopeless. The situation was desperate. Logic said they could not win. But Hyun was starting to think that logic might be the problem. For 3 centuries, the Vorthak had faced logical enemies, rational strategies, predictable responses. They had learned to counter every reasonable military doctrine. Sir, Dr. Hana said softly, what if you are wrong? What if being unpredictable is not enough? Then we die, Hyun said simply. But we die learning something new, something that might help the next human ship and the one after that. And if you are right? Hyun looked at his crew. Young Yoon at communications trying to hide his fear. Minho at engineering, already working on battle preparations despite his doubts. Dr. Hana with her brilliant mind seeing patterns others missed. Nara at tactical, her creative thinking their best weapon. If I am right, he said, then we teach the galaxy that humans do not fight like anyone else. We fight like ourselves. The distance to the Vorthak fleet decreased. Soon they would be within weapons range. Soon they would discover if one human ship could do what 12 entire civilizations could not. The indomitable spirit flew toward impossible odds, carrying the hopes of humanity and the crazy idea that sometimes the best strategy was to have no strategy at all. Contact in 30 seconds, Nara announced. Her fingers danced over the tactical controls, but not in any pattern the military academy had taught her. Instead, she was programming random firing sequences, weapons that would shoot at unexpected times in unexpected directions. Engineering ready, Minho reported. Sir? I have done something I never thought I would do on purpose. I have broken half our systems, Hyun almost smiled. Explain. Our shields will flicker on and off randomly. Our engines will change speed without warning. Our maneuvering thrusters will fire in patterns that make no mathematical sense. We will fly like a drunken bird. Perfect, Hyun said. Dr. Hana, what about our psychological warfare? I have prepared a broadcast package. Human poetry, laughter, children singing lullabies, things that have no tactical purpose but maximum emotional content. Yoon, are you ready to coordinate this chaos? The young communications officer nodded, though his hands shook slightly. Yes, sir. Random broadcasts on multiple frequencies. I will change languages every few seconds. Korean, English, Spanish, anything I can think of. The Vorthak fleet detected their approach. The perfect formation began to shift. 30 ships moving to intercept one small human vessel. It should have been like watching an elephant step on an ant. They are hailing us, Yoon reported. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was cold and mechanical. It spoke perfect English, though the words sounded wrong coming from an alien throat. Human vessel. You will surrender immediately. Resistance is illogical. You cannot win. Instead of answering with words, Hyun nodded to Dr. Hana. She began broadcasting a recording of children laughing and playing. The sound filled the bridge and went out across space toward the enemy fleet. Silence from the Vorthak ships. Then, human vessel. Your response is not recognized. Repeat your terms of surrender. This time, Yoon broadcast a love song in Korean while Nara fired a single missile that deliberately missed every enemy ship and exploded harmlessly in empty space. Human vessel. Your actions do not follow established military protocol. Explain your strategy. Now, Hyun whispered. The indomitable spirit suddenly accelerated directly toward the center of the Vorthak formation. Not at any specific ship, but at the empty space where their perfect formation was strongest. As they flew, the ship began spinning end over end. The broken systems Minho had created made them tumble through space like a broken toy. The Vorthak ships hesitated. According to their calculations, the human ship should have targeted their weakest vessel or tried to break through their formation at its thinnest point. Instead, it was flying straight into their strongest defense like a moth diving into fire. They are confused, Nara reported. Look at their targeting systems. They keep trying to lock onto us, but our random movement is making it impossible. Laser fire began coming from the Vorthak fleet, bright beams of energy that should have destroyed the indomitable spirit in seconds. But the human ship was not where their computers said it should be. It spun and tumbled and changed direction in ways that no sane pilot would attempt. I am going to be sick. Minho groaned as the artificial gravity struggled to keep up with their wild maneuvers. Hold on, Hyun said. Nara, return fire. But instead of aiming at the enemy ships, Nara fired at asteroids floating nearby. The explosions created clouds of debris that drifted between the two fleets. It served no military purpose except to make the battlefield more confusing. Human ship. The Vorthak voice sounded different now, less certain. Your tactics are inefficient. You are wasting ammunition on non-targets. Yoon responded by broadcasting the sound of human babies crying, followed immediately by the roar of a thunderstorm, followed by someone reading poetry in ancient Greek. The indomitable spirit suddenly stopped spinning and accelerated away from the Vorthak fleet at maximum speed. For a moment, it looked like they were retreating. The enemy ships began to pursue, falling into a standard chase formation. Then the human ship turned around and charged straight back at them. This is insane, Dr. Hana said, but she was smiling. We are fighting like madmen and it is working. The Vorthak formation scattered. Ships that had maintained perfect positions for centuries suddenly broke apart as their commanders tried to understand what the humans were doing. Some tried to intercept the indomitable spirit's charge. Others attempted to surround them. A few seemed frozen in place, unable to decide on a response. Their coordination is breaking down, Nara observed. They cannot adapt to our tactics because we do not have any tactics. As they flew between the confused enemy ships, the indomitable spirit fired everything they had. But not at the Vorthak vessels. Instead, they shot at space debris, creating more obstacles. They fired at empty space, creating sensor-confusing energy bursts. They launched missiles that were programmed to fly in circles before exploding harmlessly. We are not trying to destroy them, Hyun explained, as another volley of purposefully missed shots lit up the darkness. We are trying to drive them crazy. It was working. The Vorthak ships began firing at each other by mistake as they tried to track the wildly maneuvering human vessel. Their perfect coordination collapsed into chaos. Ships collided as they attempted impossible intercept courses. Others fired their weapons at empty space where their computers insisted the human ship should be. "Sir," Yoon called out over the noise of another near miss. "I think they are trying to retreat." "Let them," Hyun said. "But keep broadcasting. I want them to remember this." As the Vortic fleet pulled back to regroup, Dr. Hana sent one final message. It was a recording of humans singing together. A choir from Earth performing a song about hope and courage and never giving up. The harmony of hundreds of voices rose across the void between the stars. The enemy fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving the indomitable spirit alone among the wreckage of Kepler Station. For several minutes, nobody on the bridge spoke. They had survived. Against impossible odds, they had survived. "Did we win?" Minho asked finally. "We did not lose," Hyun said. "That might be the same thing." Yoon was studying his sensor readings. "Sir, I recorded everything they transmitted during the battle. Their communications became increasingly chaotic as we continued our attack." "Show me." The analysis appeared on screen. At the beginning of the battle, Vorthak communications had been clean mathematical equations. By the end, they looked like random noise mixed with what could only be described as digital screaming. "We hurt them," Dr. Hana said with wonder. "Not their ships, but their minds. We made them experience something they had never felt before." "What was that?" Nara asked. "Confusion, fear, the terrible possibility that the universe might not be logical after all." A message came through from Fleet Command. Admiral Jiwon appeared on screen, her expression unreadable. "Commander Hyun, please explain to me how one ship survived an encounter with 30 Vorthak vessels." "We fought like humans, Admiral. Crazy, unpredictable, impossible humans. And that worked?" Hyun looked around his bridge, at his crew who had trusted him enough to fly into battle against overwhelming odds, at the young officers who had learned to embrace chaos instead of order, at the good people who had proven that sometimes being illogical was the most logical thing you could do. "It worked once," he said. "Whether it will work twice remains to be seen. But Admiral, I recommend we find out, because if we can teach other ships to fight the way we just fought, the Vorthak might discover that conquering humanity is more difficult than they calculated." The connection ended. Outside the viewport, stars shone in their ancient patterns. Each point of light represented possibilities, worlds that might survive because one human crew had dared to fight without fighting, to win by refusing to play by anyone else's rules. "Course, sir?" Yoon asked. "Set course for home," Hyun said. "We have a report to make. And a war to change." 3 weeks after the Kepler Station incident, the Vorthak returned. Not with 30 ships this time, but with 300. The entire advanced fleet of their empire, commanded by War Prime Nexus 7 himself. They had come to end the human problem once and for all. "Sir, contacts dropping out of hyperspace all around Earth," Yoon reported, his voice tight with controlled panic. I count at least 300 vessels. Maybe more." Hyun stood on the bridge of the indomitable spirit, now floating in Earth's outer defense perimeter. Around them, the remnants of the human fleet took defensive positions. 12 ships total, all that remained after the Vorthak's march through human space. "Admiral Jiwon on Channel 1, Yoon announced. The Admiral's face appeared on screen. She looked older than before, as if the weight of defending humanity had aged her years in mere weeks. "Commander, the enemy fleet is massive. Larger than anything they have deployed before. I am afraid our chaos tactics will not work against these numbers." "Maybe not," Hyun agreed. "But we have something they do not expect." "What is that?" "Other humans who have learned to fight like humans." During the past 3 weeks, Hyun had worked with Fleet Command to train other ships in what they now called pandemonium protocols. Not every crew could do it. Some captains were too rigid, too stuck in proper military thinking, but others had embraced the madness. Captain Bae Sujin of the destroyer Defiant Hope had turned her ship into a flying disco, complete with flashing lights and music loud enough to be detected by enemy sensors. Lieutenant Kang Do-hyun of the patrol ship Dancing Bear had programmed his vessel to fly in patterns based on ancient Korean poetry. Each ship had developed its own brand of beautiful insanity. "All ships," Hyun broadcast on the fleet channel, "prepare for Project Pandemonium. Remember, we are not trying to win by destroying them. We are trying to win by being so impossibly, incredibly human that their logical minds cannot process what we are doing. The Vorthak fleet moved into attack formation. Perfect spheres of ships that rotated slowly around Earth like mechanical planets. Each formation was identical, positioned with mathematical precision. It was beautiful in its deadly perfection. "They are hailing us," Yoon reported. "Put it through." The voice of War Prime Nexus 7 filled the bridge. It was colder than the space between stars. Utterly certain of victory. "Humans, you have caused disruption to our expansion schedule. This will be corrected. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be efficient." Instead of answering, Hyun nodded to his crew. What happened next would have made any sane military officer court-martial them all. Dr. Hana began broadcasting recordings of human laughter mixed with whale songs and the sound of rain on leaves. Nara launched every missile they had, but programmed them to spell out words in space using their exhaust trails. The words were "surprise" and "have a nice day" written in letters a kilometer tall. Minho activated every system on the ship at once, creating an energy signature that made no sense. The indomitable spirit lit up like a Christmas tree while playing 12 different songs simultaneously at maximum volume. The other human ships joined in the madness. Bae Sujin's defiant hope began spinning like a top, while firing its weapons in a pattern that looked like fireworks. Kang Do-yeon's dancing bear flew in figure eights while broadcasting Korean traditional music mixed with heavy metal rock. "Human fleet," came the confused voice of War Prime Nexus 7. "Explain your tactical purpose." "The tactical purpose," Hyun said into his communicator, "is to be human, which means we do not need a purpose. We just need to be ourselves." Then he cut the communication and ordered the attack. What followed was not a battle in any traditional sense. It was chaos given form, madness given purpose. The 12 human ships flew into the Vorthak formation like a tornado made of metal and defiance. The indomitable spirit charged straight at the largest enemy vessel, spinning end over end while broadcasting a recording of children singing nursery rhymes. At the last second, they veered away and fired all weapons at empty space, creating a light show that served no military purpose except to be beautiful. The Vorthak responded with perfect tactical precision, which was exactly the problem. They moved their ships to intercept projected flight paths, but the human ships were not flying to any plan. They followed their emotions, their instincts, their wild human hearts. Captain Sujin's ship suddenly stopped in the middle of the enemy formation and began playing classical music while spinning in place. When the Vorthak ships converged on her position, she accelerated away at the last second, leaving them to collide with each other. Lieutenant Do-yeon flew his patrol ship through a group of enemy vessels while firing weapons that had been deliberately set to malfunction. Some shots went wide, others exploded early. A few split into multiple smaller blasts that looked like flowers blooming in space. It was useless as a weapon and absolutely devastating as psychological warfare. "Sir," Nara reported, her voice filled with amazement. "Their formation is collapsing. Look at this." The tactical display showed the Vorthak fleet in chaos. Ships that had maintained perfect positions were now scattered across space. Some were firing at empty areas where they thought human ships should be. Others had stopped moving entirely, as if their commanders could not decide what to do. "They are requesting instructions from their command ship," Dr. Hana translated from the alien communication she was monitoring. "But their war prime is not responding. I think we broke his brain." Hyun could understand why. For centuries, the Vorthak had faced enemies who fought logically. Even when facing death, other species had maintained military discipline. They had tried to win using strategy and tactics and proper procedure. Humans were fighting with joy, with music and laughter and poems written in missile exhaust. They were dying beautifully, and in their dying they were teaching the galaxy that some things were more important than logic. "All ships," Hyun broadcast, "final gambit. Let's show them what it means to be human." The remaining human vessels came together in the center of the Vorthak fleet. Instead of forming a defensive circle or attempting to break out, they created what could only be described as a space party. Ships spun around each other in wild patterns while broadcasting every type of human music ever recorded. Classical symphonies mixed with rock concerts, folk songs blended with electronic dance music. The effect on the Vorthak fleet was catastrophic. Ships began firing randomly, their targeting systems overloaded by trying to track targets that moved with no pattern. Several vessels collided as their pilots became hypnotized by the swirling dance of human ships. "Sir," Yoon called out, "the enemy command ship is moving." War Prime Nexus 7's massive vessel broke away from the main fleet and began heading for the hyperspace jump point. As it moved, it sent rapid signals to the other Vorthak ships. "They are retreating," Dr. Hana said in wonder. "The entire fleet is retreating." "Why?" Minyo asked. "They still outnumber us 25 to 1. Hyun watched the enemy ships disappear one by one into hyperspace. "Because we taught them something terrible. We taught them that the universe is not logical. That there are beings who can fight without reason, win without strategy, and find joy in the face of certain death, for minds that depend entirely on logic. That knowledge is more frightening than any weapon." The last Vorthak ship vanished into hyperspace, leaving the human fleet alone in Earth's orbit. 12 battered ships that had somehow defeated an empire. "Fleet command to all vessels," came Admiral G1's voice over the communication system. "Stand down from combat alert. The enemy has withdrawn from the system." Silence fell over the bridge of the indomitable spirit. They had won. Against impossible odds, using tactics that made no sense, they had actually won. "Sir," Yoon said quietly, "we are receiving messages from across the galaxy, other species who monitored the battle. They want to know how we defeated the Vorthak." Yoon smiled. It was the first genuine happy smile he had worn in months. "Tell them we fought like humans, and if they want to stay free, they should learn to fight like themselves, not like textbooks or training manuals or ancient military traditions, like who they truly are." Outside the viewports, Earth hung in space like a blue and white jewel, safe, free, protected not by superior firepower or brilliant strategy, but by the simple, impossible, beautiful fact of human nature. "Course, sir?" Yoon asked. "Patrol stations," Hyun said, "just in case they come back. But somehow I don't think they will. We taught them that the galaxy is full of unpredictable, illogical, wonderful creatures who refuse to behave the way they are supposed to. For an empire built on logic and certainty, that might be too much chaos to handle." 6 months later, Commander Lee Hyun stood in the observation deck of Earth Station Prime, watching ships from a dozen different species dock at the massive space station. Each vessel was unique, reflecting the chaos doctrine that had spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A Keltharian cruiser spun slowly as it approached, its hull painted with swirling colors that hurt to look at. A Zephyrian destroyer flickered in and out of visibility, using modified stealth systems that served no purpose except to be annoying. Even the normally serious Andromedan vessels had been modified with random light, displays, and speakers that broadcast their traditional death songs at volumes that could be heard across space. "The Chaos Academy graduation ceremony begins in 1 hour, announced Dr. Choi Hana as she entered the observation deck. She now wore the uniform of Director of Interspecies Tactical Development, a position that had been created specifically for her. "How many students this time?" Hyun asked. 230 officers from 47 different species, all wanting to learn how to fight like themselves instead of like military textbooks. Hyun nodded. The Chaos Academy had become the most requested assignment in the galaxy. Young officers came from across known space to learn the art of beautiful insanity, the science of unpredictable warfare, and the philosophy of being gloriously, impossibly alive in the face of overwhelming odds. "Any word from our scouts?" Hyun asked. Lieutenant Kang Do-hyun returned this morning from the Vorthak border. "No movement. No expansion. No new conquests. They seem to have stopped entirely." This was the most remarkable change. The Vorthak Empire, which had conquered steadily for 3 centuries, had not taken a single new world since the Battle of Earth. Their vast fleets remained within their established borders, apparently afraid to encounter more beings who refused to behave logically. "Sir," came a voice from behind them. Yoon Taek, now promoted to communications director, approached with a data pad. "We have received formal requests for chaos training from 3 more species. The hegemony of rational thought wants to learn controlled unpredictability. The mathematical collective is asking for lessons in strategic randomness." Hyun almost laughed. "The mathematical collective? The species that thinks everything can be solved with equations? They learned the hard way that mathematics cannot predict poetry," Dr. Hana said. Their first encounter with Vorthak raiders ended when they broadcast prime numbers at the enemy. It confused the Vorthak just long enough for them to escape. The three humans walked toward the Academy's main amphitheater, passing through corridors filled with beings from across the galaxy. A group of crystalline architects were learning to create buildings that served no logical purpose, but were beautiful to look at. Some gaseous philosophers were practicing the art of thinking thoughts that made no sense, but felt emotionally satisfying. Sometimes I wonder if we have made the universe a better place or just a more confusing one. Hyun mused. Why not both? Asked a familiar voice. Captain Bae Sujin approached, now wearing the insignia of Admiral. Her promotion had come after she successfully defended 3 star systems using what she called interpretive warfare, fighting that looked more like dancing than combat. Admiral, Hyun said formally, though they had become close friends over the months. Commander, though I hear congratulations are in order. Fleet Command finally approved your promotion to Admiral as well. Hyun touched the new insignia on his uniform. The promotion had come with an offer to command the entire human fleet from a comfortable office on Earth. He had respectfully declined. The indomitable spirit was his home and his crew was his family. Will you accept? Sujin asked. I will take the rank but keep the ship. Someone needs to patrol the borders, just in case the Vorthak decide to try again. They entered the amphitheater where the graduation ceremony was about to begin. 230 beings from dozens of species sat in rows, all having learned to embrace the chaotic nature of truly free thinking. At the podium stood Park Min-ho, now Chief of Impossible Engineering, preparing to give the commencement address. Friends? Min-ho began, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. 6 months ago, most of us believed that war was about logic, strategy, planning, following the rules that had been written by great military minds. The audience listened intently. In the front row sat beings who had once been enemies of humanity. Keltharian officers who had learned to fight with sculpture instead of just weapons, Zephyrian tacticians who now included music in their battle plans. Then we discovered something wonderful and terrible, Min-ho continued. The rules were wrong, not because they were badly written, but because they assumed everyone would follow them. They did not account for the beautiful chaos of beings who refused to be predictable. A young Andromedan officer raised her hand. Chief Min-ho, what happens when everyone learns chaos tactics? Will they become predictable again? Minho smiled. That is the beauty of true chaos. It cannot become predictable because it comes from within. Each species, each individual creates their own brand of beautiful madness. A Keltharian's chaos is different from a human's chaos is different from a Zephyrian's chaos. But what about the Vorthak? Asked a hegemony officer. Will they adapt? Will they learn to counter our unpredictability? This time Dr. Hana stepped forward to answer. They are trying. Our intelligence reports show they have spent months attempting to develop chaos algorithms, mathematical formulas that can predict unpredictable behavior. But every time they think they have solved the equation, someone does something that breaks their calculations all over again. Because, Hyun added, moving to join his friends at the podium, you cannot solve the equation of a free soul. You cannot calculate the mathematics of hope. You cannot predict the patterns of beings who choose to be themselves instead of what others expect them to be. The ceremony continued with the formal graduation. Each officer received not a diploma, but a small sculpture created by the reformed Keltharian artists. No 2 sculptures were alike. Each represented the unique chaos that officer would bring to the galaxy. After the ceremony, Hyun found himself alone on the observation deck again, watching the stars. The galaxy looked different now, not because the stars had changed, but because the beings among them had remembered something important. They had remembered how to be themselves. Thinking deep thoughts, Dr. Hana joined him at the viewing window. Thinking about patterns, Hyun said. For centuries, the Vorthak conquered species that fought the way they were supposed to fight. Logically, predictably, according to the rules. And now the galaxy is full of beings who fight like poets and engineers and artists and dreamers. Each one impossible to predict because each one is truly, genuinely free. A message chimed on the communication panel. Yoon's voice filled the observation deck. Admiral Hyun, we have received a transmission from the Border Patrol. The indomitable spirit is requested for immediate deployment. What's the situation? Hyun asked. Unknown contacts approaching the frontier. They appear to be Well, sir, they appear to be completely different from anything we have encountered before. Even stranger than the Vorthak. Hyun and Dr. Hana looked at each other and began to smile. New aliens, Hana said, with their own logic, their own patterns, their own way of doing things. Which means, Hyun said, heading toward the door, it is time to teach them something wonderful. It is time to show them what happens when you encounter beings who refuse to be anything other than gloriously, impossibly beautifully themselves. An hour later, the indomitable spirit departed Earth Station Prime, carrying its crew toward another impossible encounter. Behind them, the Chaos Academy continued its work of teaching the galaxy to be free. Ahead of them, new challenges waited among the stars, but Hyun was not worried. Whatever they encountered, whatever impossible odds they faced, they would meet it the same way they had met the Vorthak, with music and laughter and poetry written in starlight, with the magnificent chaos of beings who had learned the most important lesson in the universe. Sometimes the best way to win was not to follow the rules. Sometimes the best way to fight was to be yourself. And sometimes the most logical thing you could do was to embrace the beautiful, impossible, wonderful chaos of being truly, completely, perfectly alive. The stars ahead sparkled with infinite possibilities, and the humans flew toward them with joy in their hearts and madness in their souls, ready to teach the galaxy that freedom was not something you calculated, it was something you chose. Every single day, in every single moment, with every single breath, the universe was vast and full of wonders, and humanity was ready to greet them all with the same message they had given the Vorthak. Surprise. Have a nice day.